Good morning and welcome. I want to thank you all for your steadfast dedication in getting through the weather to get here, and also for your patience for our slight weather delay. We wanted to make sure as many participants as possible could be here before we get started. That being said, those who would have posted the colors remain snowed in. So with that, we will dispense to the Star Spangled Banner, it will be performed by Audrey Beausejour-Preville and the Lyman Hall Chorus. If you'd like to come forward, please. Continue in this ceremony to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We will have Peyton Mosher of Boy Scout Troop 4 come forward to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Peyton.
I pledge to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Peyton. And I would ask the Reverend Dean Warburton to come forward for our opening prayer.
On this day, when we celebrate the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., let us be mindful of the spirit that we carry in our lives and how that can be a source for goodness and change. May we walk the walk of compassion and bring compassion to the center of our lives. May we cultivate the capacity to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and to treat all people, no matter how different, with the reverence they deserve. May we live a purpose bigger than ourselves, understanding that when we do, you and I will begin to transcend our limitations and discover ourselves to be far greater than we have ever imagined. May we recognize that our lives will be measured not by the titles we carry, but by the number of hearts we heal and the lives we transform. May we be vigilant, such that, in our toil and labor of service, our hearts do not become hardened, our eyes do not become blind, that we do not forget where we came from, nor neglect those we are meant to serve. May we realize that change doesn't magically happen, that everything worthy requires effort and sacrifice, that in order to accomplish things we've never accomplished, to become people we've never been, we must make sacrifices we've never made and do things we've never done. May we always be mindful that the thoughts we dwell on become us, and that everything you and I put out into the world is going to come back. Indeed, what you do unto others, it will be done unto you. May we walk the walk of changing the world, of making it better, and of always caring. Thank you, God, for giving us the ability to be the change agents that make our town, our state, our nation a better place. Journey with us this day. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Warburton. Next, I would like to invite George Messier, our Veteran Service Officer, to come forward for some remarks. Thank you, George.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're gathered here in prayer and remembrance, and yes, in celebration. We've come together to pay honors and respects to, and if we would be honest with ourselves, to draw courage and hope and inspiration from a man who, in his all too brief time on earth, bequeathed us a roadmap, a plan. A plan on how all of us might live together, both individually and collectively, in the same society where every man, every woman, and every child is judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That which follows was set to music and presented in song, both on Broadway and in Hollywood, on a Hollywood film, South Pacific, 70 years ago or thereabouts. I will do you the courtesy of reading the lyrics and not singing them. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ears. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be carefully taught. Set against the backdrop of World War II in the Pacific, the lyrics were not an exercise in racist advocacy, not at all. Rather, the lyrics and associated screenplay were instructive in nature, meant to explain how discrimination, how hatred, and ultimately slavery came about and persisted even in a country where all men are created equal. Audre Lorde, a poet, essayist, librarian, wrote once, I wheeled my 2-year-old daughter in a shopping cart through a grocery store. A little white girl riding past in her mother's cart called out excitedly, look, Mommy, a baby made. The mother shushes her daughter, but doesn't correct her and offers no explanation or apology. The message, the point, it's not inborn, it's not inbred, it's taught. And like so many weeds in a garden, it must be uprooted, cast aside, and replaced by healthy ideas and teachings and practices. It remains for each of us in the course of our daily lives to build bridges and not barricades. The alternative, as it has always been, is too costly and too appalling to contemplate. Racism deadens the soul and the spirit of its victims and its perpetrators alike. Speaking of sadness throughout his life, Arthur Ashe offered that the lives of almost all African Americans, because of what we as a people have experienced historically in America and what we as individuals experience each and every day. And Sammy Davis Jr. said, I couldn't believe I was going to spend the rest of my life fighting with people who hate me and they don't even know who I am. Why do I have to prove what no white man has to prove? And Martin Luther King offered that every parent sometimes faces the problem of explaining the facts of life to his child. Just as inevitably, for the Negro, the moment comes all too often when he must explain to his children the facts of segregation. My thoughts turn now to the contrast between Martin Luther King's lifelong appeal to our better angels, his thoughtful, articulate, reasoned, yet impassioned advocacy, together with his adherence to the practice of dignified, nonviolent protest, demonstrations, marches, and boycotts. All of that in the face or in response to centuries of slavery, discrimination, abuse, murder, and mayhem. All that is and was Martin Luther King and continues, stands in contrast to the appalling, riotous assault on our nation's capital and the security personnel and elected officials therein carrying out their constitutional duties and responsibilities on that 6th January date 4 years ago. It would seem that we are in the company of our better angels today, if only now in spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
At this point, I would like to welcome up here the new ensemble from the Mount Zion Seventh-day Adventist Church. If you would like to come forward. And there are seats up here, and you are welcome to stay up here because you have 2 more numbers after this one, and they are not, well, the last one's not, is the entire group.
This is a very small representation, as you can see, but thank you.
Would anyone like to join us? Feel free. Those girls right there were great.
Down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside, I'm gonna lay down my burdens. Down by the riverside to study, he won't no more. Well, I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more, no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside to study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more, no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. And should there be any rivers we must cross, should there be any mountains we must climb, God will supply all the strength that we need and give us grace until we reach the other side. I'm gonna lay down my burdens down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my burdens down by the riverside to study war no more.
I'm gonna lay down my long white robe
down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my long white robes down by the riverside to study war no more.
Thank you. That was quite a performance. Next up, we will have May Tronner from Lyman Hall High School.
So I wrote an essay about Martin Luther King's words and what they mean to me today. So, if it were not for Martin Luther King Jr.'s courageous work, many valuable experiences and relationships I have had would not have been possible. As I watch King's I Have a Dream speech from over 60 years ago, I can see how much the world has dramatically changed and how his words have endured for decades and how I am the person I am today because of his dream. For as long as I can remember, my younger brother and I would attend night events at Hampden High School where my father is an assistant principal. My father has always been proud that his school is one of the most diverse in the state. My brother and I have been to countless concerts, plays, and football games, but for me it was the girls' basketball team that I always got excited for. Most of the girls on the Hampden basketball team were African American, and they were also some of the biggest role models growing up. I would go to every game I could with my dad to watch how they played together as one cohesive unit and demonstrated the highest level of sportsmanship. After watching them in awe for those 32 minutes of game time, I would stay after the games and my dad would introduce me to them. I was starstruck and inspired. I'd then have my dad get me a basketball and shoot around the Hampden court, hoping to someday be as good as those girls, because in my mind there was nothing different about them. Looking back, I can see Martin Luther King's dream in everything I was watching. It wasn't about watching good basketball players, it was about watching strong young ladies with good character setting an example for who I wanted to become. 7 years later, as a sophomore on the Lyman Hall girls basketball team, our second scrimmage of the season was against Hampden on that same court where I was once a little girl looking up to the big girls. I might not have been out there playing now that it had not been for Martin Luther King's who ensured a world where I could grow up and find role models in anyone I wanted to. No matter their color or background, the sports teams I have been on have been a great example to me of how our differences fall away as we function as one team. I have been fortunate to go to a school that also has a diverse student body, which is reflected on my sports teams. On every team that I have been on, though, the only thing that matters to others is your drive, sportsmanship, attitude, and love for the sport you are playing. When you're out on the court or field, you're not thinking about what your teammates look like or where they came from. You are simply relying on each other in the mindset of competition. You enjoy glory together and suffer defeat together. There is no better bonding experience than struggling through adversity and coming out on top. In sports, all that matters is improving and winning the game with each other. One of my best coaches in all of my life is Black, but that never had crossed my mind because she was a leader and had full confidence in me. The last thing for me to think about her was the color of her skin. Just from my experience on teams we call families, I have grown to realize that Martin Luther King's words mean forming a safe space for people to feel welcomed into. Growing up in the same town my whole life, I didn't meet a lot of new kids until I got to Lyman Hall. In elementary and middle school, everyone was friends no matter your age, race, or gender. Nobody really realized how much you learn just from going a grade higher into high school. Right as I walked into Lyman Hall for the first time, I met so many new people, so many different opportunities to choose from, and not only meet people, but meet people from different towns with different stories about why they chose to come to Lyman Hall. Making these new friends made me realize how welcoming people are, and you can't just stay in your bubble with people you have already known, and that branching out is important no matter the person's background. My school community values being a welcome place for everyone, and being diverse made me realize how important it is to know Martin Luther King's words and his dream. As you can see from not only Martin Luther King's speech, but from my personal experiences, his words are very impactful to me. Whether it has been my experience with sports or in school, the world that Martin Luther King left for us is one where we can all experience side by side peacefully.
Thank you, May. I would now like to invite up our Superintendent of Schools, Danielle Bellizzi.
Good morning, everyone. Today or this morning, we come together not only to remember a remarkable leader, but also to reflect on the enduring impact of his vision and principles on our community and beyond. Dr. King's life was a testament to the transformative power of courage, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of justice. As we gather in this celebration, we honor his contributions to the civil rights movement and his unwavering commitment to equality. This event is a commemoration and a reaffirmation of our shared commitment to the values that Dr. King held dear. As we celebrate his legacy, let us consider how we as a community can contribute to the work he began. Let us create an environment that embraces diversity, fosters understanding, and promotes inclusivity. Dr. King's dream of a world where individuals are judged by their character remains a guiding light for us all. Let his teachings inspire us to build bridges, break down barriers, and forge connections that transcend differences in our schools, our workplaces, and neighborhoods. As we engage in these discussions and festivities today, let us remember that Dr. King's spirit lives on in our collective efforts to create a more just and equitable society. May this celebration serve as a reminder that we, as a community, have the power to shape a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for joining this meaningful celebration today, and may his legacy inspire us to be the agents of positive change in our community and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. I would like to invite the new ensemble back up, if you would.
troubles of this world. Going home to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. No more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, going home to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. I want to see my mother. I want to see my mother. I want to see my mother. I'm going to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God.
And I would like to invite up Amelia Tangrady from Sheehan High School.
Morning. On August 28th, 1963, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. made the single most influential speech in civil rights history, the I Have a Dream speech. The speech was his defiant stance on anti-violence while still promising change for the future of equality for all. Dr. King's emphasis on unity, despite difference, has found itself embedded in American society for all to find a piece of the speech to take on and embody. The first lesson that Dr. King imparts is the dangerous dual threat of indifference and of hatred. First, he demonstrates that indifference was born from the refusal to believe the urgency of the moment. Such indifference, he argues, was a partial reason that racism and other injustices were allowed to spread quickly and broadly. It was, at least, in part due to people's lack of care, rather than entirely the complete national radicalism that was racism. In daily life, indifference runs rampant. Dr. King thus urges people to be active in their decisions and beliefs to prevent widespread injustices, humiliation, bullying, hatred, and other harmful prejudices. Things quite prominent in daily life for all ages, backgrounds, and ethnicities. Dr. King, in addition to indifference, heavily dissuades all from the desolate valley that is hatred. This quicksand, he believes, suffocates logic and becomes unbelievably dangerous to fall into. He believes the hatred that befell Blacks and all oppressed people was a blinding force that clouded judgment and created rifts that formed irreversible emotional struggles. Thus, Dr. King warns people to keep distance and avoid hatred, no matter how small, at all costs, as it creates unnecessary tensions and obstructs the path for all to coexist. Dr. King, in his speech,
directs all, regardless of their obstacles and however small the situation might be, to prevent an emotion as impactful as indifference and as damaging as hate to prevail. Dr. King's speech was a symbol of hope and a call to action for many Black people, although these overarching beliefs have become universal and critical. To counter the indifference plaguing the innocent, Dr. King insists that the best place to enact change is the present, wherein he calls for the sunlit path of racial justice, the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. By taking a stand in the present, he believes that real change can be created with dissent and is the duty of all citizens to prevent injustice. Through this realization, Dr. King hoped to inspire the American public to speak up about injustices they notice and to not simply surrender to inequalities and issues sweeping over others. This call to action to enact change, King hopes, would lead to a prosperous future for all. Thus, King hopes to give people the strongest tool of all, hope. He describes a future in which his 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Every valley shall be exalted, the rough places will be made plain. King's ultimate hope is his biggest lesson, that a positive mindset and a goal to the future helps people to live proactively and to strive for a better future for all. In times of despair, Dr. King hoped for brighter times, and there lay his strongest message to the world. Dr. King hoped to warn the world of indifference and hatred, and to encourage them to be active and hopeful. In these ideals, despite any situation, obstacles, people, or the like, people can find a lesson in Dr. King's speech. In believing a better future that we can change, be it helping someone pick up the things they dropped, defending a friend, calling a loved one, or whatever it may be, Dr. King's belief for a better tomorrow are lessons that can be implemented for all who hear his words. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. In addition to those inspiring words from Amelia and May, as you walk out today, I'd ask you to look around the council chamber walls and then the entryway foyer. The artwork has been provided by students from our school system in honor of today's ceremony. I would also like to thank you. I'd also like to recognize the elected officials who have joined us today. I see Representative Mary Mashinsky. Our Judge of Probate, Patrick Burney. Our Town Council Chairman, Joe Marone. Councilor Chris Regan. Councilor Jesse Reynolds. From the Board of Education, Vice Chairman Rajan Doring. Also from the Board of Education and with his camera, Ray Ross. And I hope I didn't miss anyone. Oh, hi, I'm Vinnie Cervoni, I'm mayor. Oh, yes, I'd also like to thank Mayor William Dickinson for being here, my predecessor. So at some point over the past several decades, a phrase, a question emerged in pop culture, one by which a person would seek guidance when making a decision of great importance. The question you would ask yourself is, what would Jesus do? As I thought about this day, I thought that when at a crossroads in life, people should often ask themselves, what would Martin Luther King Jr. do? Incidentally, I asked AI that question, and I was greeted by a series of quotes from intellectual and editorial writings, and that is not what I'm going to talk to you about. But there was a lot of postulating about what would Martin Luther King do, or what would he feel about where we are in the world today with respect to human relations. We can look back on Dr. King's life and reflect upon the many choices he was given or not given, and his direction in response to these challenges? What would he do? Of the choices before him, the situations about which we are aware, Dr. King often chose the harder road. He put himself in situations or environments that brought attention to himself, not always positive attention, and not attention for himself, but for his cause. This cause was not merely for himself or his family or his religious community. His cause was for equality for all races, religions, colors, creeds. Reverend King stood in protest, organized protest, to promote awareness about injustice, at times resulting in his imprisonment. One of Dr. King's well-known letters was written while he was locked up in Birmingham in August of 1963 after participating in a peaceful protest. It was an open letter to other religious leaders, a critical request that they stand with him in support of equality for all. He lamented at the weakening of religious institutions and their ability to command social justice. Even back in 1963, he was concerned that this was beginning to happen. Yet he remained optimistic. He wrote, "I hope the church as a whole will meet the challenge of this decisive hour. But even if the church does not come to the aid of justice, I have no despair about the future. I have no fear about the outcome of our struggle in Birmingham, even if our motives are presently misunderstood. We will reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation, because the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before the pen of Jefferson scratched across the pages of history the majestic word of the Declaration of Independence, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our foreparents labored here without wages. They made cotton king, and they built the homes of their masters in the midst of brutal injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of a bottomless vitality, our people continue to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom because the sacred heritage of our nation and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands." When Dr. King speaks to the church leaders, he seeks the ears of the people and their humanity. In the same letter, he reflected upon the 1954 U.S. Supreme Court Brown versus Board of Education decision, which required that education, if offered by government, must be offered equally. Nonetheless, the law was not enough. Desegregation by legislation is not enough. It must occur at the human level. There are times when we must appeal to our own most basic instincts and understandings. Where do we all feel things? For many of us, it's our purses or wallets. Most here know my political affiliation. Many think they understand my politics, but I'm going to clarify it at its most basic, in terms of the social and the economic. From a social perspective, I am more than content to live my life as I live it while leaving others the same privilege. Let's live and let live. Where it gets complicated is when other people's bad decisions touch my wallet. When crime gets expensive, we all pay for it. We contribute to the cost of enforcement and any restitution that government may owe the aggrieved. We even socialize insurable losses. Insurance rates are based upon everyone's experience, not just your individual experience. We pay for prisons to incarcerate those deemed unfit or unsafe for society. We all pay for that. I use that as an example because I believe it to be one that can be understood easily. Racism and inequality are forms of oppression. When we treat others in discriminatory ways, deprive them of the same opportunities we offer to those we believe to be more entitled, we oppress the others. We live in a world wherein the government has taken it upon itself to support the oppressed. It is the better side of our humanity that does this. Our modern governments have decided that we must create housing opportunities, afford healthcare opportunities, assure nourishment, extra educational support, public transportation, emergency shelter, and other subsidized opportunities for those in need. And perhaps it is helpful for us to understand that from the socioeconomic perspective, there is a cost to racism and inequality that must not be ignored. When we treat each other better, we all do better as a society. While I'm saying crazy things, I'll end with this. At its most basic, equality, the elimination of racism, rests upon all of our shoulders. It starts with our own individual interactions between one another. We can further the eradication of inequality with a smile and a handshake, and the rest will follow. And we should regularly ask ourselves, WWMLKD, what would Martin Luther King Jr. do? And I leave you with those words. Before we end this ceremony, thank you. Before we end this ceremony, I am going to welcome the new ensemble back up to lead us as we all sing, "We Shall Overcome." I think we're going to have a hybrid joint effort here. Isn't that a lovely way to end things? Thank you.
I haven't played it in a while, but I will give it a go.
Okay, now I'm going to ask all of you to stand so that we can all sing along.
Thank you very much to all of our contributors to this very important ceremony, and I wish you a safe and enjoyable rest of today. Thank you.
Oh, you sound great. Amen.